the story centres around Giorgio, who is a soldier who is living in the 1860s in Italy, just after the unification of the country, and he's working for the Royal Italian Army, and he has a lover named Clara, and he is sent from Milan to a new military outpost, which is very remote in the countryside, and there he meets his superior's cousin named Fosca, and it's a story of how he falls out of love with Clara and in love with Fosca.
I'm playing Giorgio. He is a captain in the Royal Italian Army. But I think what defines him most, at least at the beginning of the show, is just how passionate he is. He's got this love of literature, of nature, but particularly of Clara, his lover. But then, in the first scene, it's he receives the news that he's been called off to a military outpost, which kind of breaks this ideal life he's had with Clara in two, and eventually, he meets his new military colleagues and all of that. But most importantly, he meets Fosca, the cousin of the colonel.
I'm Emily, and I'm playing Fosca. She is a really ill young woman who lives at this really remote military outpost, surrounded by soldiers, doesn't really have anyone to talk to. She's very unstable, can be very obsessive. She's a real challenge to play, but it's really fun.
You love this woman very much.
I wrote you.
Is she beautiful?
An angel.
Then why don't you marry her?
She's already married.
And you respect her?
Respect has everything to do with
Well,
love.
that's not true, but it hardly matters. And is your angel also a mother?
Right, I'm Giorgia, I'm playing Clara. She's Giorgio's lover and is part of the love triangle that goes on in the play. It's a really lovely musical to play Clara for, because she's got this really quite complicated situation that she's stuck in a loveless marriage with her son, and she's desperately unhappy and very lonely, and then Giorgio comes along and she falls completely head over heels for him and pours everything she has into their relationship. And then as soon as you see it, and you've got this beautiful climax that actually happens at the very beginning in happiness, and yet as soon as we sing that, he leaves and Clara's alone again. So the entire play kind of looks at Clara through her letters to Giorgio and their correspondence. And you can see Clara getting desperately more fearful that she's going to lose Giorgio, and she doesn't know what to do, and she's starting to feel incredibly lonely again, and worried that she's going to lose Giorgio to this Fosca character who keeps on popping up in all of her letters.
It's Fosca, the true love, against Clara, the love of kind of obligation and maybe not so passionate and per se. But what we wanted to bring to it was this new depth behind Clara as well, and to kind of put far more questions in the audience mind about actually what is the truest kind of love. Is Fosca's the truest love, or is that just because of the circumstances in which she finds herself that she can give that kind of promise to Giorgio? Passion is that it's actually one of Sondheim's darkest and most complex musicals, and it's a very operatic piece, and so that brings a lot of new kind of challenges to us who actually have quite a lot of experience in musical theatre here at Oxford. With this particular play, what Sondheim's trying to do is, Sondheim and the Pioneer trying to do is locate what the truest love is, or the purest love, and what we find is that it's located in something that actually is pretty uncomfortable, doesn't have very much logic, is very impulsive, which is this character of Fosca. So it brings all kinds of new challenges to directing actually a character which has a lot of psychological depth within this musical theatre context, which is new and a great challenge for us, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your average musical show-tuney show. There's so much psychological depth to the characters. So we wanted to do something refreshing for the Oxford audience.
Yeah, I mean, as Naomi said, it's actually the opposite end of the scale from a kind of all kind of singing, dancing kind of musical. There's actually very little time for even kind of applause or for the audience to even pause and kind of reflect. It's so intense.